Omar, anytime you want to start this, it's fine with me. I think we're ready.
Okay. So I'm just going to, this is Omar Nazem. I'm the treasurer of the water board. I think most people on the phone have been listening to these calls for a while now. So I apologize if this is repetitious for you, but just with this conference call virtual meeting format, we are doing on account of the pandemic and the public health considerations at stake. I wanted just to read a few things into the record and just to inform anyone who has not been on these calls before. This is a business meeting of the New York City Water Board. The purpose of the meeting is for the board to consider specific actions and to get updates informationally on topics described on the agenda. The agenda and all the meeting materials will be described, the resolutions, the minutes, and the presentations are available on the Water Board website, which is nyc.gov/waterboard, which is WATERBOARD. If you go to the announcement section on the right, there's in big letters, it says download materials. Under that announcement section, you click it. It's one PDF. It's got everything in there. There is also, where this is, I think, the third meeting we're doing this way, we have an accessibility option for anyone who is hearing, who has a hearing difficulty. It is a live text captioning service that's available. I'm not going to read the URL because it's extremely long, but if you go to that packet I described on the Water Board website, nyc.gov/waterboard, you look at the second page of that PDF packet, there's the streamtext.net URL. You copy and paste that into your browser, and you'll get live text captioning of the meeting. Because this is a business meeting, there is not a question and answer opportunity. Members of the public with questions can email them or call us basically anytime they want, apart from during this meeting, at nycwaterboard@dep.nyc.gov, which is nycwaterboard@dep.nyc.gov. And the phone number for the water board is 718-595-3594. That is everything I've got. So Al Rodriguez, board secretary, let me pass it to you, and you can take the roll call to get things going. Thank you.
Okay, calling the roll. Chairman Carney?
I am present.
Member Dr. Carolina?
Present.
Great. Member Fernandez Ketchum?
Here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
my phone went dead in the middle of the call.
Member Freed?
Present.
Member Golden?
Present.
Thank you.
Right.
Member Sue?
It's just that I'm on a conference call
Present.
right now.
Okay. Member Sue, are you present?
Present.
Okay. Member Shaw, are you present?
Present.
Okay. And I would ask people who to mute their lines if they're not speaking. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
I think we have a full house, Mr. Secretary. I think everybody's present.
Yes, we do.
Terrific. This is Carney. We're going to start this meeting and get it going, and we will start with the minutes, the approval of the minutes. There is a resolution that is contained in your packet. You all had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any suggested revisions or questions about the minutes? Hearing none. Rather than asking for an aye vote, are there any objections from the members to the contents of the minutes? Hearing none, then we will deem the minutes approved unanimously and move on to the next agenda item, which is the approval of an amendment to the board's agreement with its rate consultant. Will there be a brief presentation of that, Omar?
There won't be a presentation. I'll make a few remarks just to explain what this is for the members.
Terrific.
And I'll start by Ed Marcus and Sean Lynn from Amawalk are on the phone today.
Ed, how are you? Wait, let's say hello. I didn't realize. Good to have you.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you for being here.
Our pleasure.
So the board is familiar with Ed and Sean. Amawalk has in different configurations. Ed in particular been associated with the board of the city's water supply system since the mid 1980s. They've been with us a long time and have a lot of institutional history with us and a lot of knowledge in extreme detail of not just the financial but also the engineering aspects of what we do here. The board last put in place a rate consulting agreement with Amawalk in February 2017. That vendor agreement is still the one we are working under. It runs until 2022. We originally had authorized $800,000 of compensation under the contract. We are starting to dwindling down to the last $50,000 under that contract. And what we are doing is we're following a kind of form which we've used in the past with our rate consultants, where we had the initial initial dollar authorization, which we expected to come back and supplement with subsequent funds later on. We did this most recently in 2015. The June meeting, the board, the longtime members of the board may recall, we had kept supplemented then existing Amawalk contract with additional funds in June. We're trying to kind of repeat that again, and I would say that the reasons. The reasons we're doing this are, I think everyone is familiar with the sort of rate consulting services Amawalk provides, the model maintenance they do for us, the scenario planning, the big upstate billing report that they do. There are a couple of other things I want to flag that members and the public may not know about, in particular the revenue recovery work they do for us. They work with our customer service department and the board extensively to look for billing irregularities and lost account type situations, and it's the history of that is actually it's quite a effective program. And I don't want to present a vendor as a sort of return on investment type of thing, but the history has been that the revenue recovery actually covers the cost of the contract and then some in the past. So that aspect of what we do with Amawalk, I think we don't talk about a lot, but is an important aspect. I would just draw newer members' attention to in particular. So the ask, just to summarize, is we had $800,000 authorized back in 2017. We want to add $350,000 to that, bringing the total contract authorization to $1,150,000. We think that'll cover us through 2022. Under the initial term of the contract. The contract does have some extension options. If we choose to invoke those in the future, we would come back in the future to talk about funding for those extension options. But the additional $350,000 should carry us through June 2022 when the current term of the agreement expires.
Mark, thank you.
Yes.
Let me make sure I'm clear. It's Al. The additional $350,000 is a target number. We may not reach that, I gather, by June of 2022.
Correct. We may underspend, but we cannot overspend.
Got it. All right. I get it. Are there questions from the members?
This is John Golden. Hi, I had a quick question, which is the nature of the contract is one in which we allocate a certain amount, and then are we billed by the hour? Is that why we're not able to have visibility into what the expense will be in the future as opposed to being billed on a flat rate?
Yeah, so it's a professional services contract. It resembles what you'd see with an accounting or a law firm. There are different hourly rates for different levels of seniority of Amawalk's professional staff. And there is actually quite a bit of variability month to month in the hours. Two of the things recently that have caused our hours to spike, I'd say, and had probably spending a little more than we'd expected was we are undertaking a review of the city water bill, what we bill the city of New York itself, and that's currently billed under an older method that just needs to be refreshed. For example, the list of agencies and the head counts, the list of buildings. Needs to be updated. It's actually quite an extensive project, just given the scope of the city government and the head count of the number of properties in question. Amawalk has actually done an amazing job of getting that updated, but it's been quite time consuming for them. So it has been more of a drawn hours, I think, than we had anticipated. We thought it was kind of a light refresh. It actually became quite an extensive research project. That's one thing, and then the second is when there are administrative disputes, say with the State Department of Environmental Protection over our wholesale, billing activities. AmWalk gets involved quite extensively there as well, and that becomes there's considerable kind of discovery type processes and information exchanges, and it becomes that can become quite a you're answering 100-page plus questionnaires. And quite in some detail that needs to be to the standard of an administrative law judge. So those are the two things that cause a lot of variability around hours. They're just hard to predict. But I would echo again, we kind of in a sense underfunded the contract in the past and came with the expectation to come back for supplemental funds midstream. So it's not a departure from past practice. The difficulty of projecting the hourly investment notwithstanding.
Omar, thank you. John,
Thank you.
Are you happy with the answer?
Thank you, yeah.
All right. Are there other questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
So moved, Demetrius, Carolina.
Thank you, Demetrius.
Still seconds. Agreed.
Thank you. Again, I'm not going to ask for an aye vote. Are there any objections to the approval of the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution is approved unanimously. I just realized, I did not ask for a motion to approve the minutes or a second. Obviously, a procedural error. Al, will you... well, I guess I need to go back, I'm sorry, and ask for a motion.
Well, you could, but Mr. Chairman, the best practice is to ask for motions to approve this. You did ask if there was any objections to adopting the resolution. So in a pinch, I think that works. Although I think
Mr. Secretary, if it works for you, it works for me. Thank you.
Okay. But going forward, I think the best practice is to ask for motion.
Is to ask for a motion, right? I do agree with that.
Right.
It was an oversight. Ed, before we leave this, let me thank you for the work that you do for all of us. You've been with us for a long time. You've got real institutional history. We are very pleased with the quality of the work that you do. I didn't realize that your recovery work actually has in the past covered the cost of your contract. So you're like you actually are a profit center for us. Thank you.
And it's actually very interesting and fun detective work, working with the folks in BCS and with CIS to mine the system, looking for anomalies. So we appreciate the work, and we have fun with it too. So thank you very much.
It's good to have you with us, Ed. Thank you. The next agenda item is the progress report on the implementation of new utility billing computer software. There is a presentation, and there is a resolution afterwards. Who's going to do the presentation?
Jeff Lynch here, the Deputy Commissioner for Customer Service. How are you, Chair?
Mr. Lynch, I'm fine. It's good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
So I'm here, and I'm also joined by Albert Kramer, who's the project manager running the project and ever-growing team as we get closer to the end of the project. So I'll do a couple of slides, and he'll be here to do some slides as well.
Mr. Kramer, thank you. Mr. Kramer, thank you very much.
Good to be here. And we also have Cecil McMaster here if there are questions that are on the technical side as well.
Cecil, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Chair. How are you doing?
It's terrific to have you with us, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So we're well into the billing for the future update, and I just wanted to remind the board that the last update was actually prior to my joining DEP, but it was in December of 2019, and obviously a lot has changed since then in the city that has affected our timeline here. We'll talk a little bit about that. DEP is the board's billing agent that issues water bills for property owners. The overall goal of the project is to replace DEP's existing billing system software, which is more than 20 years old, with newer, higher functionality billing system. The new software is going to allow for a better customer-oriented experience by making account information easier to access and understand. We expect it to make it easier to find tech personnel with the skills to run the system, since the existing software runs on legacy source code. It aligns the water systems technology base and with skills with marketing practices that are more current than when the original system was developed, and allows for more latitude in future rate design decisions, since fewer software-based constraints will exist than presented in the legacy system. That was on slide 2. I'm going to turn over to slide 3 about some key updates on the progress milestones that we've been working through to Albert here.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. So as Jeff mentioned, obviously a lot has changed, and with the pandemic. So as a result of that, we're looking at a new go live date in the second quarter of next year, calendar year 2021. That's mainly because of the challenges, logistical and otherwise, presented by the pandemic. That being said, it's been a really impressive effort by all of the folks on the customer services, information technology teams to really rise to the occasion, our partner consultants as well. And we've got a really great working remote setup going, and we've still made an incredible amount of progress. The thing we really want to update you on is that we've completed what's called the development phase. So that's mainly the time where all of the customizations and configuration of the system is done. And there's a lot of work that's been done there. And now we're in what's called the deployment phase, with 2 really main areas of focus: testing and training. We've done a lot of testing. We're actually right now in what's called user acceptance testing. So that's when our DEP testers are really able to go through the system and make sure that it will absolutely work as intended. We're also doing a lot of work on training both web-based, so that's sort of things that folks can do from their own computer, either working at a DEP or at home. And we're also working on other training activities in the months ahead. We're also focused on organizational change management. You can have the best system in the world, but if the people aren't ready for it, as Cecil always says, it's not good enough. So we're doing a lot of work there. And we've got what we're planning on in terms of end user training beginning in January. And then, you know, we want to do a little deep dive. I'm now on slide 4 for those following on training. We're also we had Customer Service Week this last October. Again, that's about engaging the larger team in the Bureau of Customer Services, around 500 folks, letting them know what's going on with the project and how they're going to be trained to help them be successful upon go live. And then at this month, here at DEP's facilities, and we're doing a lot of work to set up to be ready to do in-person training in January. And then the last thing here on 5 is just a timeline for folks if they want to look at it.
So that was a brief overview, and I would just note we were originally scheduled to go live at the end of this year, and we've again pushed into the second quarter of 2021. So you're talking,
Jeff. You're talking May of now 2021. Is that,
yeah,
we have
we're expecting mid-May, and that's the goal at this point.
Okay.
So
and quick question. As that happens from the customer perspective, what will their experience be from one billing system to another? Will it be simply a reformatted or slightly different bill they receive, or will they not see a demonstrable difference?
Yeah, so Adam, this is Albert. My goal is that the customer barely notices. You know, they'll say, oh, I have a new color bill and it's easier to understand. Oh, there's a newer version of my DEP account. The website looks nicer. Otherwise, for them, they shouldn't even know. That being said, we will do we'll have informational bill inserts for customers we have email addresses. We'll email them, letting them know about the change.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Jeff or for Albert or for Cecil?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may ask two quick follow-up questions, and appreciate DEP coming today. I think this was my request and continues to be a keen interest of mine, particularly as Member Freed, particularly as it relates to our greater flexibility in future rate structures. So I'm just wondering, what functionality or additional functionality does the new billing system provide us for potential parcel-based billing if we wanted to look at a separate or impervious area stormwater charge, and or kind of different water rates by customer types if we ever wanted to look at conservation pricing or further ways of looking at the impacts of low-income customers? Does this give us greater flexibility and ability to think about more innovative or creative rate structures, or is that something that we'd have to go in and build another module into the billing system as we develop those?
So thank you, Adam. This is Albert again. So the short answer is yes. The approach we've taken is to build the system to match the rate schedule as it exists today so that we can make sure we bill it as approved, but also have the flexibility for additional changes in the future if so decided.
And if I may add, this is Joe Mirren, I guess Executive Director of the Water Board, that it's also going to add more functionality than just, a stormwater charge. We'll be able to look at declining block and blot if we want to go to that, variable, rates based on various factors, such as I think as, Member Freed, you brought up, based on affordability or income types of things, it will have a lot more flexibility than we're currently able to get accomplished with the existing CIS system, which will also be contingent on, what is the data that's going into it as well. So we've got to really first get it stood up and have it functioning for about a year after we get rollout before we could start going down that path of thinking about what are the alternative billing mechanisms and structures we want to look at. And of course, that will be very much involved with, the board, because it could also change how we're doing rate, forecasting projections as well.
Absolutely. No, and I think that the timing of that, when you think about the mapping DEP is doing now for surface flooding, or, as required by local law from the council, as we think about the kind of more sustainable, billing methods and drainage approaches that DEP is undertaking. There are a lot of things that can come to bear, but this is really the technological and institutional underpinning that would enable all of that to occur.
Adam, thank you. I sometimes forget to thank you, too, for the expertise that you bring to these questions and this issue. Thank you very much for thinking carefully about this and for raising these questions with the DEP folk. It helps me to understand what our goals are, and without your questions, I'm not sure I would understand as clearly. So thank you very much. Are there other questions? All right. We have a resolution, the approval of selection of electronic payment processing vendor and authorization of negotiating authority and board funds. Is there? You've had a chance to read the resolution, but is there a discussion, Omar, that we should have here?
Yeah, this will be. I'll provide. This is Omar again. I'll provide some verbal comments just explaining what this is. This is another vendor action that mimics something we did previously, but it's so long ago, barely any members of the board will remember. Since 2012, the way that customers have paid their bills, just mechanically in terms of transaction processing, is through a contract with Citibank. Citibank is the board's bank, and Citibank has a pair of subcontractor relationships in place, which are basically one to handle paper-based payments and one to handle electronic-based payments. And that arrangement has actually worked quite well for a time, but there have been some some changes that have called into question whether we want to make a revision to that kind of three-part arrangement, particularly in light of all the cool and exciting stuff happening with the billing system, as well as some of the technological changes and requirements that are presented by having newer, more state-of-the-art software. And the answer, to kind of preview the answer, is that we think that the thing that makes sense to do is to pull out the electronic processor piece that currently is under that 2012 Citibank subcontract relationship and have a direct agreement in place with the board with a different electronic processor company. And the kind of the top line reasons for why are that the company we're looking at, which is a company called Paymentus Corporation, has a pre-existing technology and business process relationship with the vendor of the new billing system we're buying. The system is Microsoft Dynamics based. We're purchasing a product called UMAX, which is a utility industry customization designed just for water utilities that rides on that Microsoft Dynamics platform, and is sold by a company named Itinerus. So Itinerus and Paymentus have a business relationship, a technology relationship, existing source code, where the Paymentus electronic processing platform works with the UMAX billing platform, and the source code exists, it's been tested, it's secure, and it's actually live in other markets already, in particular Boston. So that was actually quite a big attraction to our technology and customer service people, to say nothing of the project management people who actually have to kind of make sure all the work happens and do this stuff. So that's kind of the overall description of what we're trying to do here with this procurement. Now, just to give a couple more details, the Paymentus platform is, it's a cloud-based product, so the source code is not only more up to date but continuously upgraded. If you look at what we have now, a lot of custom coding was done back in 2012 and 13 that Cecil and his team have made work miraculously. Sometimes they're impressive, but it is legacy source code that needs to get upgraded and go through additional testing and security checking if we were to make it work with the UMAX platform. The assessment thing was just, why not buy something off the rack that we know already works because it's been tested in other markets. In addition, the Paymentus product works out of the box with an entire category of payment channels we don't currently accept. Those are the big technology company platforms. So things like the Apple Pay, the Google Pay, PayPal, Venmo, and so on. You can't pay your water bill with those right now. Under the Paymentus UMAX configuration, you could. That's a big draw. Just as particularly, we have a lot of younger customers coming online, becoming property owners in the city, and they look to pay their bills with those types of methods. Not something they do currently. With the Paymentus platform, they could. Just to say, I think I said this by implication, but just to say it point blank, Citibank will remain the bank. There's no change. The deposits will stay at Citibank. Paper payments will continue to be processed by Citibank's existing subcontractor. So no change to banking, no change to paper payments. We're just talking about electronic payments moving over. In terms of cost, there is a cost increase. It's a model. This is a model projection. You have to make some assumptions around payment mix and volumes, but we think it's about an incremental $400,000 per year to run on Paymentus versus Kubra. Now that is a meaningful uptick. Now, a couple of things to say about that. One is our existing pricing we could likely not obtain again in the market today. It's legacy 2012-13 pricing, so there's kind of a one-time inflationary step up there. In addition, there's some fairly considerable one-time software development costs we'd have to undertake with our existing vendor to get them where they need to be to integrate with UMAX. So we kind of skip that process and avoid those software development costs we'd otherwise have to incur. So it is more expensive, but it has better functionality, more secure, and we're avoiding the cost and risk again of some stuff we'd have to do otherwise. Last point I will make is that, and this is a bit of a payment nerd point, so if you find this just interesting, I understand that, but what we're going to be doing with one specific category of payments, and I mention this because we may come back to the board again to discuss this because of how this would work procedurally with the exact flow of funds. If you look at automatic clearinghouse payments, so these are basically bank-to-bank electronic payments that are domestic. Those have to get cleared somewhere, and the way the Paymentus product works is that they have a web payment relationship with a company called Braintree, which is a PayPal subsidiary. Under their existing business process and data exchanges, those ACHs get cleared at Wells Fargo, which is a different financial institution than Citibank, obviously, which is not problematic. The clearing can occur there, and then the cash can get wired over to Citibank daily. So there's not really there'd be a one-time transition, but not a ongoing effect on the kind of average balances, the availability of cash to the board after you make that transition. It would mean that if we go with Paymentus, we may need to come back to the board in the next month or two and ask the board to designate Wells Fargo as a second acceptable banking institution to the board to under the local water fund classification. So it'd be Citibank as a primary bank, and then for solely ACH purposes, Wells Fargo. I just want to mention that so you don't get surprised when we come back with that resolution. Lastly, I should mention as well as how we did the selection of this. We formed a 9-person technical team. Was drawn from the technology department, the customer service department, the budget office, and the water board, and we employed a standard scoring sheet of I think it was 12 criteria, and we assigned weightings. So kind of standard city technical evaluation committee type framework type scoring sheet, and everybody got a chance to kick the tires. We did basically a beauty pageant where both the vendors demoed their products, showed us what it looks like, showed us what they could do if you wanted them to. And we, in the scoring, I think it was 8 of the 9 selectors thought Paymentus was the better option for in the overall scoring. They thought it made more sense given the project to make the migration to Paymentus from the incumbent vendor. So we went through that selection process over a period of several months and gave everybody a chance to kind of present and do the Q&A and do the product demo. So that was quite a lot of information. So I'll stop talking and ask, are there any questions from the board that we can answer for you?
Do the members have questions?
This is John Golden. Yes, thank you. This is John Golden. Omar, thank you for walking us through that and for all of the effort that obviously went into this process. Sounds like this decision was one that was well thought through and involved a lot of diligence. The question that I have is how the payment structure works with this vendor. Is it a one-time license fee? Is it an ongoing subscription payment? Do they get payment in connection with individual transactions the way that credit card companies or other payment networks might? How do the payments work?
Yeah, so it's similar to how we do it now. The way it works now is it's volume based. So there's a per transaction fee, which is generally a fixed number of cents per transaction, with the exception of credit and debit cards, which are a percentage fee. But those are thankfully, I would say they're not a large part of our payment mix, so I think about 1% of our customers are using cards, so not most of what we're looking at. All of those transaction-based fees get collected and reported on the monthly Citibank invoice we get. So right now we pay once a month invoice to Citibank. It covers Citi's costs, all the paper-based payment costs, and all the electronic processor costs. What would happen in the new state is just the electronic processor costs would come out from under the Citibank contract, and we'd be getting a second monthly invoice from Paymentus. It would report the exact number, a mix of payments, and then they were depending on what it was, whether it was in ACH or a Venmo payment. There would be a different per transaction cost. So you'd see a long list of payment channels and then volumes multiplied by a penny per transaction rate. The one variance from that would be the credit card transactions, where you'd see a percentage of the dollars as the basis for the fee, but those are again 1 to 2% of the dollars we actually collect, so not most of what we're doing.
And have we looked at the extent to which the per transaction fees are competitive? I know you said that this vendor would result in some additional expense, albeit relative to a contract that had been negotiated some time ago, but just in terms of the individual transaction fees, because we're talking about so many specific transactions, and even though we're talking about pennies, I think it's just important that we have a sense as to whether it is the offering is consistent on a general basis with market pricing.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. It is a step up in terms of fees. it will again be invisible to nearly all customers. I'll start with that, since the board absorbs the cost of everything, aside from those card payment fees. So there's no customer impact, either way. In terms of, no, that doesn't mean we're indifferent to it, of course. I think the overall, I think the overall balance there is a step up in the transaction fees. It is meaningful. It's not a tiny step up, but it is a step up worth mentioning. We thought that was an acceptable thing for the board to do, again, for the reasons that you're getting those additional payment channels, you're skipping probably a year's worth of software development that would be required to get the incumbent vendor to where they'd need to be to even match out-of-the-box functionality. And you get some security enhancements as well, because you have the automatic rollout of source code updates anytime there's hopefully not, but if there's ever a security issue identified that gets fixed enterprise-wide on the Paymentus side, we get the automatic rollout of that source code. We get real-time posting of payments as well, which is when you pay your bill, it's immediately reflected in the billing system. Right now, there's a lag of several hours or even a day because the data file exchange has to happen. So I would say, although there is a step up in cost, we think it's consistent with where the market is today, and we think it's acceptable both because of the enhanced functionality, the enhanced payment channels, and the additional security we're getting. So it wasn't a strict, optimized just for price comparison. It was let's look at the whole package of things we give the customer in terms of their optionality, their security, and does that justify the cost step? And the conclusion was yes, it does.
Thank you. It sounds like your process was thorough in determining that it was a superior alternative, and I was just trying to get a sense as to whether the pricing was generally consistent with what other vendors would be charging in the market these days, and it sounds like you're comfortable that is in fact the case.
I think that's correct, yes. On a fully loaded basis, that's correct.
And just my last question are we paying them a fee in addition to the per transaction fee, or is it only the per transaction fee that they get paid?
Yeah, there's a de minimis. There's a few $1,000s fixed costs we pay, but 99% of the money is variable, transaction based. There's a de minimis fixed cost.
Great, thank you.
Omar, thank you. Are there other questions for Omar? I do have a couple, Omar. This is a potential 11-year commitment that will not exceed $8 million. Am I reading the last paragraph of the resolution correctly? 5 years and 2 3-year extensions.
Yeah, well, not exactly. I think the intent of the resolution is to kind of assure funding for the first 5 years. I think it's likely we can cover, if we do exercise the extensions, this would cover those periods as well. But we generally don't seek funding to cover extension periods under vendor agreements that haven't had the options exercised yet. So I would describe this really as funding for the 5-year initial term. And then shouldn't we say that? Shouldn't this last paragraph be revised to say what you've just said? And we can vote on it today, Omar, if you'd like. That's fine, as long as we all understand. That's a reasonable amendment. Yes. I think that aligns the logic in the text more closely. Absolutely.
So we're talking about a 5-year term that may cost $8 million, and in addition, there are 2 3-year extensions, the cost of which is unknown now. The aggregate cost of which is unknown now.
Well, I wouldn't say unknown. I'd say we wouldn't want to seek funding prior to exercising an option.
Yes, I think we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting that we recognize what the extensions may cost us now. I'm saying, I think you're saying that the 2 3-year extensions will be at a cost that we cannot recognize now. Essentially.
Yes, exactly. I think that's correct. I'd say we can't ask for money before we've exercised the option to actually extend the thing.
Yeah, of course, and we may not go forward. It may be that at the end of 5 years we don't like these folk and we can move forward with another.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, all right. And how does the cost, the 5-year cost at $8 million, compare to what we're spending now? I mean, I understand the increased functionality. I understand that there is additional security, but I'm unclear as to what we're paying for a service now that we think is less than what we're getting, and such that I can compare apples to apples.
Yeah, so the all-in fee pool right now is about $800,000 a year for everything, for paper and electronic. And the all-in fee pool, if we go to Paymentus, will be about $1.2 million a year for everything. The step up is entirely on the electronic payment side.
So the difference, the annual cost difference, is about $400,000.
Correct. Again,
Okay.
it's an extra 400. I mean, that's again the combination of the inflationary step up, the security enhancements, the functionality, et cetera.
Omar, may I suggest then that on a 6-month or rolling basis, or 12 months, the staff should decide what it wants to do, we get an update on how this new, once we vote it, assuming we do, on how the new vendors are performing.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do quarterly. I think with we had, if you go back in the distant past, if you look at what we did when the 2012-13 arrangement went into place, I think we did some reporting to the board along those lines. We became less frequent as the kind of confidence grew in that arrangement. We can go back to quarterly briefings. I think that would be completely reasonable, not a big ask of us. We could give you kind of a comprehensive financial packet quarterly with a big focus on how the electronic side of things is doing. We can absolutely do that for the board.
It'll work for me, Omar. Thank you. Are there other questions for Omar on this resolution?
Mr. Chairman, it's the secretary. And this is a question for the board and Mr. Nazim. So I would suggest that the last resolved of the resolution read as follows. Resolved that the total compensation for services performed for the initial 5-year term shall not exceed $8 million of board funds. Is that what you all agreed to?
Sounds, Al, like that's what we agreed to. Do the other members agree that that's where we are?
Yes.
Okay, terrific.
Okay, so we'll show that resolution will be, for the record, when it's entered into the record, that last sentence will read as we just stated.
Thank you very much, Al. May I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution as amended?
Member Freed, so moved.
Adam, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Member Golden, second.
John, thank you very much. Again, rather than asking for a voice vote, are there any objections to the approval of the resolution as amended? Hearing none, the resolution is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. The next to last agenda item is the financial update.
So it's Omar again. This is a short, it's a one-pager. We gave a long update quite recently. I think the message is actually very much the same from the last meeting. And to kind of put those into short, succinct sentences, revenues are ahead of plan. We are doing better than we had budgeted for in terms of the revenues at this time of the year, number one. Number two, we are nonetheless down compared to last year, year over year, mainly, I would say entirely because of the impacts and the sort of knock-on effects of the pandemic. And then three, we are seeing an increase in delinquencies compared to where we were this time last year. To kind of put some specific numbers on those, through the 17th, which was Tuesday this week, operating revenues were $1.84 billion. That was 9% ahead of where we were budgeting to be this time of year when we set the budget in June. That's a positive variance of $153 million. That is, however, if you compare through November 17, 2020 to November 17, 2019, 1 year ago, we are down 6.2%, and that is a negative 122 million variance. So doing better than we had thought we would. We're conservative budgeters, as I think we all agree is prudent, and we're outperforming that, which is very good. But we are nonetheless down from last year for $100 million. So that's on the revenue. That's the big picture. If you go to what's going on with the water consumption, and since just for the public's benefit, most of our customers are billed on a meter basis, which means if you look at how much water is being used, that's a pretty good predictor where your revenue is going to come in because you charge them a dollar rate times the amount of water. So it's a good leading indicator of where revenues are headed. And then you can also kind of back into what's going on out there in the economy by looking at who's using more, who's using less. If you go through the fiscal year to date through the end of October, you've got some pretty wide variances here. Residential water use is up about 2% compared to where it was last year, October 2019. But meter consumption by commercial customers is down nearly 21% compared to last year, reflecting, I think, the very intuitive change in where people are spending their time with the various transit disruptions and lockdowns and work from home arrangements the pandemic has led everyone to adopt, or led many to adopt. If you look at what's going on with delinquencies, and this is kind of the flip side of that revenue decline, if the customers aren't paying as much money, it's got to pop up somewhere. Well, it's popping up in the amounts owed balance, the accounts receivable balance. And as that balance ages, it flips from just normal money owed into a delinquency type thing, and then we start reporting on that and start paying attention to that. The overall delinquent dollars, which were past the due date on the invoice, was 21% or almost 21% higher at the end of October 2020 compared to last year. And that was a combination of two things. The main thing it was we had over 16,000 more delinquent accounts in October 2020 than we did last year. We also had a very slightly higher average delinquency balance, but really the main effect was just more accounts were delinquent because of the economic hardship that the pandemic has caused and continues to cause. If you drill down on how that almost 21% increase in delinquencies is spread out, all subcategories of water accounts have seen an increase in delinquencies, but again, there is some considerable variability in where it comes from. Smaller residential properties, the tax class 1 properties, are up 15% compared to last year. The larger residential properties, those 4-unit and up properties, are 21% higher compared to, or 20.6, almost 21% compared to last year. And the commercial properties, mimicking that big consumption decline we just talked about, are up 41% year over year. So kind of reflecting the different levels of stress that are being experienced by owners of these properties. That's it for the update. Those are kind of the key statistics to where we are. It's a similar story to what we had told the board previously. Can I answer any questions about any of that?
None here, Omar. Other questions from other members? Hearing none.
I guess one question I have is there been any thought around what the rebound may look like or not from an economic recovery or not, in terms of, are we projecting that the rate of delinquent accounts continues to increase and the average amount goes up? Do we think there'll be a leveling off, or is it a V or U or W-shaped recovery that we'll see with the bills? Just thinking about how we're thinking about these different scenarios as it comes to future budgeting and funding requirements.
John, this is Joe Murin, the executive director. So
I'm sorry, that was Adam.
That was Adam.
I'm sorry. But at this point, I would say no. We're just still trying to, bring in the information, best estimate where it's going. And we've been working closely with, both the authority in terms of, with their, doing the bond offerings, as well as with OMB in terms of how they're looking at some of the economic factors that are coming into play. So I think we're still continuing to being, to Omar's point, trying to be optimistic, but also being, duly cautious as well, in terms of how we're proceeding and what we're looking at both for, the short term and the long term in terms of the capital programs as well as on the expense side as well.
Joe, it's a great segue into the information that I asked for that the board has now received. We have a fixed procedure for dealing with delinquencies. That procedure hasn't changed. We are, I'm sure, trying to be as reasonable as possible, but have we looked at the prospect of changing the procedures in any way, given that we have no way to project? Omar's 41% number was a bit scary for me, real, but scary. Are we looking at whether or not we can ease any of the pain of those folks who are delinquent and where those delinquencies are increasing, both in percentage and in dollar amount?
We are considering. I don't want to, I think it's still early for us to say how we're going to proceed, though. I think one thing that we're very hopeful is that there is, presumably going to be a new administration within the federal government starting January 22nd, I believe. And, we're hopeful that that may have some easing of, impact, both either another stimulus bill or an infrastructure bill or both, and that will help us, and that would hopefully help our customers as well. And that will then help guide us in terms of what measures we may or may not have to take in terms of, mitigating those delinquencies. I think as we saw and we reported out when we gave the financial update back in, a month or so ago, when the stimulus checks were going out during the early part of in the spring and the summer, we had that uptick, and then we had a decline because people, I think, were reallocating the funding they were getting from the federal government to go and pay their bills. Should we get another, round of, funding like that coming out of the federal government, that probably will help us as well. And that would mitigate, hopefully any measures we would have to take. So, again, I think we're just being very cautious and we're trying to think things through. But very much aware of, I think, what you and the other board members brought up, at the last meeting, in making sure that we're keeping the most vulnerable uppermost in our mind, while also making sure that we're still maintaining and collecting enough money to keep the system running, and seeing how we could take measures both on the day-to-day expense side as well as in looking at the capital programs to say, how do we, if we need to come back even from where we are now, what are those measures that we would have to do? And we're working closely with OMB in terms of they will go through and do their January update on the capital and expense budgets, and we expect to work closely with them at that time.
Joe, thank you. Are there questions from any of the other members? Hearing none. A couple of things before we close the meeting. I did not thank Jeff and Albert and Cecil for their presentation. At the end of their presentation, it was excellent, and I was grateful to hear it, grateful to receive it. Good information. I also did not thank them for this beautiful photograph that they used to end their presentation. It's just unbelievable. It's just a beautiful picture. So for the record, I want to thank the group for the quality of that presentation. Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman. This is John Golden.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
I'll second that, please.
Thank you, Adam. Hearing no objections, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you, everybody.